Welcome to the Whisper News channel. It has been confirmed that Russian forces have taken control of coal mines in the eastern regions of Ukraine. However, in the same report, it is stated that the Russian forces also suffered significant losses in this process and lost about half of their troops in the conflict. In the last operation, Russian forces attacked with 120 soldiers. However, half of these soldiers did not return. It has been confirmed that Russian forces have taken control of coal mines in the eastern regions of Ukraine. However, the same report suggests that Russian forces also suffered significant losses in the process and lost about half of their troops in the conflict. The published report describes the latest developments in the conflict as Russian forces intensified offensive operations by making significant gains in the Donbas region. In recent days, Russian forces have demonstrated significant firepower, succeeding in capturing several towns and cities, including coal mines in eastern Ukraine. The mining region of eastern Ukraine known as Donbas is an important strategic location for both Ukraine and Russia. The region is rich in natural resources, especially coal, which is very valuable for energy production. Therefore, the control of coal mines in the region has important economic and political consequences. Despite the loss of strategic resources, the frontal report shows that the Ukrainian forces managed to mount an effective counterattack against the Russian forces. The report shows that Ukrainian soldiers, in particular, have significantly adapted their tactics, using more effective countermeasures, including improvised explosive devices and targeted sniping, against Russian forces. In addition, Ukrainian forces are said to have inflicted significant losses on Russian forces, causing the death of a large number of Russian soldiers, including many high-ranking officials. The report also points out that Ukrainian forces have regrouped and regained control of some areas previously held by Russian forces. The increasing casualty rate on the Russian side indicates that the Ukrainian forces have managed to overcome some of the challenges posed by the Russian army's use of superior firepower, including artillery and air support. Instead, Ukrainian forces focused on using asymmetric tactics, using local terrain and infrastructure knowledge, and using popular support to their advantage. As a result, the latest report from the front of the conflict reveals that Russian forces have taken control of key strategic resources in eastern Ukraine. This development, however, coincides with significant losses suffered by Russian forces, who lost about half their troops in the conflict. The report also shows that the Ukrainian forces, by adapting their counterattack tactics, took more effective measures against the Russian forces and managed to inflict significant losses on the enemy. This dynamic shows that the conflict is highly volatile, with both sides engaged in an intense struggle to control strategic resources in the region. With the change in the advantageous situation in the war, Ukraine turned its eyes back to Crimea. As you may remember, 3 explosions occurred in Crimea in 2 weeks. In this process, Russia counterattacked and hit the port of Odessa, but the retaliatory offensive of the Ukrainian forces was not postponed, as the advantage of military equipment changed hands. We know that after the attacks on the port of Odessa, Ukrainian drones and missiles destroyed the Russian military base in Crimea. The first statement after the attacks came from the President of Ukraine, Zelenskyy. President Volodymyr Zelenskyy recently stated that the Crimean Bridge, which connects Russia's annexed Crimea to mainland Russia, is a legitimate target for Ukraine. Zelenskyy argues that Russian troops used the bridge to carry weapons, thus making it a target for Ukraine to neutralize. The announcement came amid escalating tensions between Ukraine and Russia as Ukraine's counteroffensive progressed more slowly than originally planned. Zelenskyy stressed that retaking Ukraine is a priority since Crimea is its own sovereign territory. But the Kerch Bridge is not just a logistical route, it is used to militarize Crimea and carry ammunition. According to Zelenskyy, Ukraine considers it a hostile object and a legitimate target for any offensive action. He added that any target that carries the essence of war, not peace, must be neutralized. Zelenskyy acknowledged that the Ukrainian counteroffensive was progressing more slowly than expected. The operation began later than expected, giving Russian troops ample time to mine Ukrainian soil and build multiple defensive lines. However, the president explained that despite these difficulties, Ukraine is advancing in its counterattack and approaching a point where retaliation can gain momentum as it moves through the mined areas. Zelenskyy noted that Ukraine was cautious about offensive actions, primarily in order not to cause casualties among its personnel and military equipment. Ukrainian President Zelenskyy has called for the neutralization of the Crimean Bridge, which is seen as a key military target because it is used by Russian troops to carry weapons. Ukraine's counteroffensive is advancing despite initial delays, and Zelenskyy believes retaliatory actions may gain momentum in the near future. The situation in Ukraine remains challenging as the need for journalistic coverage becomes more and more vital. The tension on the territory of Ukraine continues to increase without slowing down. While mutual losses were inflicted, the scope of the attacks clearly increased. In this process, Ukrainian troops are trying to completely liberate many areas where the Russians settled. With the start of the Great Offensive, dozens of regions were liberated from the Russians. However, offensive operations are proceeding slower than expected, because the Russians, after taking the region under control, mined many parts of the Ukrainian lands and created dozens of positions. In this process, it is very difficult for armored vehicles, tanks and soldiers to advance. As a result, Ukraine says the target is Crimea. But Russian President Putin argues that the war in Ukraine will be won no matter what. In this process, Putin openly stated that the west of Poland was a gift from Stalin. Ukraine and Western countries are aware of the situation. Putin wants to use Ukraine as a springboard. But Putin's plan is known. While the Russians haven't had any success in Ukraine, they can never go to war with a new country. As can be seen, while the Ukrainian forces were conducting successful operations, the Russians began to lose their lands. We'll see what happens. But the tension continues to increase day by day. We have come to the end of another video. We will continue to report the events in the coming hours to you quickly and accurately. We continue to inform you objectively about the events. You can like the videos to support us. You can also subscribe to the channel to make it easier to follow new videos. I wish you all happy days. See you later.